Hey everyone, welcome back to the Fantasy Authority Game Day Show. We're ready for some Week 1 action. The NFL season is finally here. Of course, we did have our Thursday night game between the Chiefs and the Patriots, where the Chiefs just demolished the defending champions, something that I'm sure most of the nation was happy to see, most of the fantasy community was happy to see, and pretty much everybody who's not a Patriots fan was happy to see. If you are not familiar with this Game Day Show, we do this every single week. Typically an hour and a half before kickoff starts, so 11:30 a.m. Eastern, 10:30 Central, whatever time it is on the West Coast. I can't keep track of all these different time zones, but an hour and a half before kickoff, that's when we go live. We're a little bit late today. Blame Ryan, actually. Just because I want to blame somebody, Ryan, so I'm blaming you.
Whoa. Why it's got to be me?
I don't know.
It's like the one time I was on time today.
Well, you were the first.
I got to get credit. It was a 50-50 chance.
Yeah, you had a 50-50 shot of being blamed there. You lost the roulette. Oh, goodness. So, is Jeff Donovan joining us today, guys? He said he was going to be on, and then I don't know what happened.
He's still sleeping.
Oh, he's still sleeping.
Yeah, Seahawks don't play until about 1:20 his time, so he's in the bed.
He's knocked out. What is it? It's like 9 a.m. his time. Almost 10 a.m., isn't it? No, almost 9 a.m. Get up, man. Maybe it's almost 8. I don't know. I'm really bad at this time zone thing. Anyways, I'm your usual host from the TFA podcast, Anthony Pinzone. I got Kevin Steele and Ryan Alexander Williams with me. I'm going to put his full name in today, Ryan.
Oh, my full government. I feel special.
That's it. Yeah, man. It's like your mom yelling at you. Except it's me. That makes it even weirder, I think.
So you're my mama now?
You know what's even better? I mean, I guess Anthony has this luxury too because he doesn't have to worry about a loss. But it's great to know that my team's already 1-0. We already got it out of the way. The Kansas City Chiefs. I haven't even put my pants back on yet since that game. I mean, it's been that great.
Luckily, the computer's showing only torso up. So
yeah, thankfully. Just don't stand up, Kev. Stay right where you are. What Kevin's alluding to there is the Dolphins and Tampa Bay Buccaneers game has been moved. So if you are just waking up to this news, or really you don't pay attention to your fantasy football team until Sunday morning, right before the games, get to your lineup and take out your Dolphins, take out your Bucs. Hopefully you have somebody to fill in those positions. Otherwise, I mean, you kind of deserve the 0-pointer, because if you haven't been paying attention for that long, then that's on you. There's a guy in my league who still hasn't set his lineup, by the way. Just saying.
The worst.
I can't stand it. Anyways, let's get into some football, guys. We have a whole slew of matchups today. It's week 1. Lots of stuff. I don't want to start with the Jets and Bills, though. That seems like the worst possible way to start the new game day season, is with the Jets and the Bills. Two teams that everybody is saying is just kind of flopping the season on purpose. The suck for luck mentality, but for whoever quarterback is going to be great this year and it's going to be the first overall pick. So I'm going to skip down a little bit to a matchup that is almost guaranteed to have at least 6 really good fantasy plays, and that's going to be the Raiders at the Titans. Derek Carr versus Marcus Mariota. They got Amari Cooper and Michael Crabtree, and then on the other side is Rashard Matthews and Eric Decker with Delaney Walker. Both running games. We're finally going to get to see something out of Marshawn Lynch maybe, and then DeMarco Murray on the Titans side. There are so many options here for this Titans-Raiders game. And I know, Kev, you're not very high on the Raiders this year, but you got to admit, from a fantasy aspect, they're looking pretty good. I mean, Titans-Raiders, they're not known for their defense at this point.
Oh, for sure. I mean, it has one of the highest over-unders of the week. It started out as a 52 and it went down a little bit. I think it's now down to 50, but I think it actually opened at 52 or 53. It's been bet down a little bit, but yeah. This game is one of the best games to have this week. I think, if you play DFS, it's one of the best games to target this week. I think everybody I think that when you look at, I think Marcus Mariota and Derek Carr are both top 10 plays this week. I think you look at Amari Cooper. I think he is a fantastic play. Michael Crabtree. And then on the opposite side of the football with the Titans, I think that's the harder part. I think that's the questions you're going to have to answer of, who would you play Eric Decker over? And, or Corey Davis, if you drafted him, would you give him a consideration? Which I probably wouldn't, just because I don't know how I just don't think that this is, I would rather wait and see with Corey Davis, see how things playing out. And then you have Delanie Walker. But Delanie Walker is interesting because I think Delanie Walker last year played in the slot like 58% of the time, and now they're going to be utilized. Now they have more weapons. I don't know how – I don't feel great about Delanie Walker, at least long-term, but I think for this week against the Raiders, who are terrible against the tight end, I think you definitely are playing him. But I think as a long-term aspect, honestly, if Delanie Walker comes out and balls out this week, I would be looking to sell Delanie Walker because I just don't think his long-term outlook for this entire season is going to be what you expect. I wouldn't be surprised if he finishes outside, of the tight end 1 range.
Wow, really low on Delanie Walker this year. That's upsetting because I certainly have him as my tight end in a league or two here. What do you think, Ryan?
Yeah, I think Delanie will be fine. He has that rapport with Mariota there. I mean, they got a lot of new faces in that offense, and I still think he will see some value. I do think that Eric Decker coming to the team maybe puts him back in a little less for a touchdown appeal, but when you're talking about the tight end position, I think he's one of the safest options that you have out there. But yeah, this game I think is just going to be all types of fireworks. Both of these defenses are bad. They can't really cover the middle of the field. Secondaries are really just questionable. Raiders aren't even having their first round pick, Gary and Conley, out there to start. So I think everybody that you have in this matchup is pretty much in play just because of the points that are projected to be scored there. Really looking forward to seeing how the Raiders do offensively, getting Derek Carr back after that gruesome injury that he suffered last year and wasn't able to play. I think he's ready to come out there and show that his MVP type season wasn't a fluke. And I love Cooper and Crabtree both today.
What do you think we'll see out of Marshawn Lynch? I mean, I have no idea.
Yeah, man. It's we talked about it earlier in the offseason about how I thought Marshawn would probably be, utilized for later in the season, right? Why? I get it. He's excited. He's back in his hometown. He wants to show out for Oakland, but they really, can't afford to have him go down. A lot of people are talking about this DeAndre Washington, who should be able to get the lion's share of the touches if something were to happen, or maybe they're resting him. So I think that DeAndre could get a bulk of this run here at the beginning, and maybe they split time as they did last year with Washington and Jalen Richard. So I really don't know. It's kind of one of those things I'm just waiting to see. But I think he probably is looking at, 12 to 15 touches a game to start off the gate, at least until they get him back into football playing shape.
Yeah, Jalen Richard, a name we're not really hearing very much, and probably for good reason in the redraft community. I don't think he's really touchable right now. But definitely a guy to keep an eye on because, like you said, if Marshawn Lynch were to go down, he's been out of football for a year. He's in his 30s at the running back position. That's a big deal. We'll have to see it. It would probably be a split between Richard and Washington were that to happen. Kev, any further thoughts on Marshawn? What do you think he's going to do?
I think he's probably locked into the first and second down role, and I think you have to believe DeAndre Washington is probably the third down back for the team. I don't think there's no way that Marshawn Lynch isn't going to get the workload that I think that maybe some believe that he's going to. I mean, the team's already said as much that they're not looking to give him over 200 carries, which is a big problem for him, especially where people likely drafted him. And we don't know. He's a complete unknown at this point. Like, we don't know what to expect from him. We haven't seen a whole lot. And how is he going to be able to hold up through the rigors of a whole season? If Marshawn Lynch sort of gets going early in the year, that's another guy that I would be looking to sell as quickly as possible, because I don't think he's going to be a full season guy where you feel like that you can just start him every week. I've been on the DeAndre Washington bandwagon all year. I love DeAndre Washington. If he's available in any league, I would absolutely run out and grab him, because I think he is one of those few sort of league winning pickups that could separate you down the stretch. So for me, like I said, I'm just not buying into Marshawn Lynch long term. But for this week, I do think that he's a decent play. He's a high-scoring affair, should get opportunities near the goal line, and somebody that you can feel confident in, I think, is a solid RB2.
All right. Our boy Phil Stutter. I don't think I ever figured out how to say your name, Phil. I'm sorry about that, but he has a question for us here in the live chat. Probably should remind everybody that if you do have questions, we are answering them the entire show here, right up till kickoff. Lineup questions, trade questions, life questions, whatever kind of questions you're going to have for us, we'll answer them, or at least we'll try. He says Brandon Marshall or Jeremy Maclin this week. You got Brandon Marshall going up against the Dallas Cowboys, that rough secondary there. And then who are the Ravens going against here? The Bengals. So you got Jeremy Maclin going against the Bengals, and then you have Brandon Marshall going against the Cowboys. Phil, is this a PPR or is it a standard league? We'll try to answer it, from both sides of the fence. Anyways, just in case there are other listeners from a standard. Ryan, I saw you actually responded in the chat and you said Brandon Marshall. Why is it Brandon Marshall for you, buddy?
Well, it's Brandon Marshall for me because of this next question that came up from somebody as well who just hopped in the chat. I'm going to botch the name, so I'm going to apologize.
I just call him TN, man. I call him TN every year. Yeah.
TN, he's asking about OBJ, and I just don't think that OBJ is going to play a significant role in this game. Maybe he does suit up and he goes out there, and that's unfortunate if you have him, because you're just going to be wondering what the hell is this guy going to do for you. But I don't think that they're going to put him out there in a rivalry game that to further hurt himself. I think even if he lines up, he's probably just going to be a decoy out there running routes. I think if you have other viable options to play on your team, you got to get these guys in. To your waiver wire, see who's out there. I'd much rather play a Kendall Wright who's going to be out there. You don't really like the Bears offense, so to speak, but he's the number one option and he should be getting some touches there to get you, maybe 7 to 8 points. That's way better than a 0 from an OBJ who's playing in the late game, and we just don't know enough going into this point to see if he's playing. If you can find somebody in some of these later games, like a Paul Richardson who's playing in Seattle, maybe you put him in over OBJ. Just wait it out, see if you get any other news by the afternoon games, and then make another, enlightened decision by that point. But I think at this point, if you don't have any good options, you have to play somebody in this noon game over OBJ. Kev, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I don't think you can trust that OBJ is going to play, and even if he does, I think you have to feel like that he's probably going to be a decoy, like you mentioned. There's no, it sucks. Obviously, week one, you kind of hope to play him, but I don't think you can. I think it's far too risky. I think it really depends on your options of what you had. But I think for me, looking at if you for some reason had nobody of that you really could feel comfortable with. Maybe if a Sterling Shepard didn't get drafted, I think he's somebody that certainly would be in play in this game, and somebody that nobody really is talking about. Everyone's sort of gravitating towards Brandon Marshall, rightfully so. Another guy that I really like, if you can possibly play, not that I would advocate this on a weekly basis, but a tight end in your flex, Evan Ingram. I really like Evan Ingram this week. I think that he's going to be utilized. He has Rhett Ellison ahead of him, which is somebody that I wouldn't be afraid of at all. I think he's more of just the pass or the blocking tight end. And I think Evan Ingram's going to see. I could think Evan Ingram, especially if OBJ's out, I think he could see 6 to 8 targets this week. We know Eli loves the tight end, utilizing the tight end. And I think Evan Ingram, if you aren't familiar with them, you're going to be familiar with them very quickly. And he's another one of those guys that I would love to have on my bench, at least as a stash, just because even though he is a rookie, but I think that with his situation, I think he's in a rare situation where he's going to be able to start early. And I think, we saw in preseason just how versatile he is. He's not really a tight end. He's more of a wide receiver that's casted as a tight end right now. And so that's another guy that I would consider. And then if you absolutely decided to wait and you had to wait on the 2 games that are tomorrow night, I don't think there's going to be great options for you out there. But I know people are going to be like, what? And I think Brandon Coleman could actually be an option with no Willie Snead there in New Orleans. I know this is tough,
wow.
The more I've looked at it, there's no Willie Snead right now, so he's going to be on the field. He's going to see plenty of targets, or not targets, but he's going to see his snap share much higher than most people would expect, and he is a big body that could see targets inside the red zone. So it's sort of a flyer, but if you're in a really deep league and sort of you've been waiting this out and there's no great options and Brandon Coleman's there, he's an option, and if you're having to wait until the last minute, he does play tomorrow night, so that's somebody you could have on your bench. Like I said, I don't feel fantastic about Brandon Coleman, but I wouldn't be surprised if he finished with 30 yards and a touchdown, which is much more than obviously you're going to be able to get out of a lot of other players that could be available. So like I said, I don't feel great about it, but Brandon Coleman is a name that I wouldn't be surprised has a decent week.
No Robbie Anderson love up there in New York. I bet you he's available.
Well, but I think people are running towards that. But then again, like I said, if you're playing that game, or if you're playing that game of waiting, then obviously you have to make that decision now.
True.
So, if you decide to wait till tonight to see what happens with Odell Beckham, then I think that you're very limited and because you look at the you have the Broncos and Chargers game, which likely is going to be low scoring, and I doubt anybody of value is going to be available on your waiver wire. And then from the Vikings and Saints, again, I think obviously Michael Thomas is owned in all leagues. Maybe Ted Ginn would be available somewhere, possibly. And then from there, you have, in the Vikings, you have Adam Thielen, which is likely owned, and Stephon Diggs in all leagues. So you're very limited in opportunities. That's why I said that I really feel like that a guy like a Brandon Coleman, which don't feel great about, or maybe even a Cole Beasley if he's out there. I think Cole Beasley would definitely be an option as well.
That's true. Yeah, good call, because if you are waiting till the last minute, you have very limited options. It just so happens you got 6 teams playing that don't have great wide receiver options, which really stinks. If maybe you slide another wide receiver in that you feel comfortable with, and then you have running back and wide receiver and maybe tight end options depending on how your flex plays, and then that just gives you a little more freedom to kind of work with there, especially in a place like the Giants, who the running back situation is a little volatile there. You got Orleans Darkwa and Paul Perkins and Shane Vereen. I bet you at least 2 of those guys are available. So good call. I just said we had another question here. Oh my goodness, you guys are going quick here with the questions. So TN needs somebody in the flex. It's a half-point PPR. He's got CJ Anderson, Duke Johnson, Kobe Fleener, and Matt Forte. I know my answer is easily Duke Johnson. Who are you guys feeling there? CJ Anderson, probably another great option.
Yeah, those are all tough options to me. I apologize, TN. I was still thinking about that question and didn't get around to answering that, just because those guys all pretty much fall in the same range to me. I think I would rank them as Duke Johnson, CJA, Forte, and then Fleener. I really just don't like this matchup for Fleener going into Minnesota. With Drew Brees on the road there, it just doesn't seem like a good matchup for me. And there are other options that I would much rather play, especially in a half-point PPR. Guys who are just going to be on the field and touch the ball more often than not. So, yeah, Duke Johnson for me, the Cleveland Browns should be playing from behind a lot. He's the pass-catching back. That makes all the sense in the world, like Anthony said. And then CJA, while Jamal Charles is still in flux there, who's not expected to get a lot of run, I think you can make a case for him as well going against the Chargers.
Yeah, rethinking it, I may actually like CJA better against the Chargers than Duke Johnson. It's really tough. We don't know what to expect from the Browns yet. We've heard all this stuff in the offseason about how they're going to line up Duke Johnson in the flex, and they're going to try to get him involved in the passing game more. And but until we see it, how do we believe it? And CJ Anderson is a starting running back for the Broncos, who are going to be a run-heavy team with Trevor Siemian at the quarterback position. Chargers defense is beatable. They've gotten better, but they just lost Denzel Perriman. So they are definitely beatable up the middle. So as I think about it, and as I listen to, you as well, Ryan, I think I may lean CJ Anderson actually over Duke Johnson.
I can't blame you for that, man. A lot of people are down on this Browns offense. They think they're going to get absolutely shellacked by the Pittsburgh Steelers. I think that, it could be somewhat more close of a game, at least to start. But Duke Johnson is going to get run if this is, ended up being a blowout. And we saw that happen last year when, Ben and Brown and Bell all left the game in that fourth quarter. They're just going to let Deshaun be out there, get comfortable with the offense, and probably drop some dump off plays for him. So I think that makes sense. But yeah, CJ Anderson in a competitive game against the Chargers, who, really try and get pressure on the quarterback. We know Simeon's not throwing deep, so he could be looking for CJ Anderson as well. I don't think you can go wrong with that.
It appears Kev agrees.
I got 1,000 things going on. Did he say if it was standard or PPR?
It's standard league, yes.
Oh, then yeah, CJ Anderson.
He also has another flex spot in a different league where he needs to decide. I'm sorry, that one was PPR. I'm sorry, getting them mixed up. He has a PPR league. That one's a half point, and then he has a standard league, which is another question. Does a half point change your decision between CJ Anderson and Duke Johnson?
No, if it was a full point, I would be a little bit more entertained at Duke Johnson.
So his standard league question, he has to decide between Rob Kelly, Delaney Walker, and Sterling Shepard. I'd probably go with the running back. In a standard league, he's going to have the best chance to score, I think, out of those three.
Yeah, to me, it's Delaney, then Rob, then Shepard. I think that there is. If there was a prop bet, I would probably bet $50 that Delaney Walker scores a touchdown this week. I just think it's just such a perfect matchup for him. We talk about it all the time, how you can take advantage of Oakland with the tight ends over the middle of the field, and their secondary is not 100%. They're not going to have all their usual suspects out there. Linebacking core is just bad. Kevin talked about it on the TFA pod this week. So I think it's Delaney for me. And then Rob Kelly, I think, is going to get some chances in the red zone this week. He's the starting running back. I think they want to get, slim Rob, not fat Rob going. He has lost some weight there. So this is a good get right spot for him against Philly. And then Shepard would be last for me. I think Shepard is just a guy that you play if you don't have any options and you want exposure to that game, or there's no other wide receivers that you can play that seem viable. You play out Shepard there. If OBJ doesn't play, then it's going to be pretty much Shepard and rookie Evan Ingram catching passes from Eli.
Good points. Kev can't decide. I know he has a million things. I don't know what he's doing. Setting up DFS lineups, setting up standard league lineup. Probably not standard lineups. He's got some DFS lineups going strong here.
No, I think this is tough because I don't really want anything to do with Rob Kelly. I understand the feeling behind him, but I feel like this is going to be a game that's going to be very high scoring, and so I don't think it's going to be. I don't think this is a good game script for Rob Kelly. So I don't feel comfortable using him. I think it is, to me, it's between Delaney Walker and Sterling Shepard. The hard part is, as we talked about before, I think, with Sterling Shepard, I don't think that we can just automatically say that, Sterling Shepard is, without knowing the status of OBJ and everything else. I think it's a little bit tough. So I do think it's Delaney Walker. I just don't love Rob Kelly at all this week. I just don't think it's a great game for him. And I think there's a real chance that Chris Thompson outscores him.
Wow, Chris Thompson. There's a name I haven't heard in a while. Hey, they just gave him an extension, right? So they're serious about this Chris Thompson cat. Maybe he does get some play. Hankins is here. He says, if OBJ doesn't play, who would you play out of Tyrell Williams, Eric Decker, Evan Ingram, Kenny Britt, or Theo Riddick? Why don't you give us a few more options? This is it is a PPR league. He needs one receiver and one flex. So it was Tyrell Williams, Eric Decker, Evan Ingram, Kenny Britt, Theo Riddick.
Yeah, so I was just going through these with him. It's tough. I think that I definitely like Decker. pretty much the same reasons that I said for Delaney. He's kind of like the pseudo tight end there. He's going to be playing for the slot. I think he has good chances to succeed too. Tyrell would be the next guy, even though, the matchup really isn't that favorable for him when you're talking about him going up against Chris Harris there in Denver. It's me to, maybe Evan Ingram. Hopefully, it's PPR, so you're hoping that OBJ sits or doesn't do much. And I really think that Ingram has a good shot of getting anywhere from, 7 to 8 targets at least with OBJ being off of the field. I think he's definitely viable. I kind of like Theo Riddick too, going there in the flex as well. In a game that we've talked about could we're playing at an up-tempo pace, so that up-tempo pace means that they're going to be, on the field a lot, passing a lot. Lots have been made of Riddick having these wrist injuries. I think that he's fully healthy, and we know what this guy can do when he's on the field. So Stafford loves him in PPR. I think that would be my third choice there.
I was also stuck between Tyrell Williams there and Theo Riddick. I agree on Eric Decker. I think Eric Decker is a good play going against Oakland. Tyrell Williams has a tough matchup, though. It's gonna, like you said, he's gonna see a lot of Chris Harris or maybe Aqib Talib. They're gonna try to get him covered. Kenny Britt, again, that Cleveland offense, I'm not sure what to expect yet. Theo Riddick is coming off a major injury, though, so I would probably lean the same way, Eric Decker and Tyrell Williams, so we can just get a chance to see what we're gonna get out of those other guys. But if OBJ doesn't play, like Kev mentioned before, Evan Ingram becomes a very interesting option.
I probably wouldn't play Tyrell Williams. I think he's just far too risky. In Denver, first game of the season, that place is going to be wild. And the matchup is certainly the worst, I think, for everybody. I think it comes down to really, for me, I think I would probably be either, for the wide receiver, it's very close, I think, between Eric Decker and Kenny Britt. I think you feel like the Steelers will probably get out early, forcing the Browns to get out of their rhythm and play, throw the ball far more. If that happens, then I think that's great news for Kenny Britt.
Well, he needs a receiver and a flex. He could play both.
Well, Theo Riddick's locked into the flex for me. The guy's averaged he's averaged 5 receptions a game over the last 2 years. I think he's a lock. If you remember last year, actually week 1, when Amir Abdullah played, they both had 5 receptions. However, if I remember, that's the game that Theo Riddick just went off, scored 2 touchdowns in that game. I think he had like 30, almost 30 points in PPR leagues last year, or something close to that. Really had a really big game. So Theo Riddick's a lock for me in the flex. So it really is going to come down to Decker and Kenny Britt. So I would probably lean towards Kenny Britt in a PPR because I think he's going to get more opportunity and more than what Eric Decker will. Like I said, I think it'll be a little bit more spread out. So for me, I think it would be Kenny Britt and Theo Riddick.
I don't think there's any way you can start Kenny Britt over Eric Decker coming on with Deshaun Kaiser, who we don't know what we're going to get out of him. He's got Corey Coleman on the other side. I understand Decker's got a lot of options there too in Tennessee to contend with, but man, if you're saying, hey, these guys are close, let me look at the quarterbacks, I can't go with a guy who's playing for Cleveland and a rookie QB who wasn't even supposed to start. That's my 2 cents. And I'm a little worried about Riddick with that return from injury, but that doesn't always seem to affect these guys. These guys are ridiculous athletes. Phil has another. Sorry, go ahead, Brian.
No, just real quick, I just wanted to say that it can't go without saying that Joe Hayden is going to be, playing back in Cleveland this game. So, I mean, I kind of really just like Joe Hayden in this matchup. I think he really wants to try and impress, and I see him guarding Kenny Britt. I don't see him guarding Corey Coleman. So, just if you want to go with the narrative factor there, I think it's interesting.
All right, Philip has another question for us, guys. He needs, what should my core be? He has Sanders starting, Jeffrey starting, and Marshall in the flex with Tyrell Williams and Cobb and Macklin on the bench. So really, which 3 receivers should he start out of Emmanuel Sanders, Alshon Jeffrey, Brandon Marshall, Tyrell Williams, Randall Cobb, and Jeremy Macklin? Lots of great options here, so I can see why it's a tough decision. Who are you guys going to go with while I try to figure out who I'm going to go with here? They're trying to figure it out too.
So yeah, no, for me, we a lot of talk in the chat about what to make of Randall Cobb. I think we've touched on it so many times on our podcast and everything that in this matchup, Richard Sherman is not going to – they're not going to throw at Richard Sherman, and he's going to probably see somebody who's on the outside. I think they're going to make Davante Adams that sacrificial lamb, so then you have Jordy Nelson, who's pretty much going to probably see Quentin Rollins, and Demarius Randall, who's going to be on Randall Cobb. And Randall Cobb is going to – I'm sorry, I'm talking about the Packers defense here. So Sherman will be on the outside, probably guarding against Davante, and then Lane will be guarding the slot, I believe, for Seattle. And Lane is not good. PFF has him ranked in the bottom on their in the bottom tier of their cornerback matchups. Randall Cobb should just eat. He's eaten before in this matchup when he was playing the slot back in 2015. So I think that he has a good chance to succeed. Now, Emmanuel Sanders is one of those guys. He falls into that category of like a T.Y. Hilton, where players are looking at him. The matchup really isn't too enticing because of the secondaries that they're facing against. But when you went in and you drafted these guys, you drafted them based on what they can provide you no matter what the matchup is. And I think that you don't want to get cute. You want to start your studs at the wide receiver position, and Sanders falls into that category for me. So I would have to go Sanders as well. And then Brandon Marshall, like we talked about with OBJ being out, I think he's just in the best spot to receive points there.
So who are you three again, Ryan? Sorry.
I had Sanders, Cobb, and Brandon Marshall.
Sanders, Cobb, and Marshall. Kev, have you selected three yet?
So I don't want Emmanuel Sanders. I don't with the options that available. Like I think that I'm not in love with Emmanuel Sanders going up against San Diego. They have one of the best duos, defensive backs in the league with Verrett and Hayward there. So I don't feel fantastic about that. I think this is going to be sort of a really kind of a defensive battle in this game. So I don't love Emmanuel Sanders with Simeon. I think Randall Cobb is a smash play this week. Absolutely love Randall Cobb. I think he outscores Davante Adams easily. I would not start Davante Adams this week unless you were desperate. I just don't think this is a great week for Davante Adams. And just like Ryan said, Brandon Marshall, I think also you just kind of lock him in. I think he sees a ton of targets, and so those would be the two I go with. And who is the other couple guys that were options there?
Jeffrey, Tyrell Williams, and Macklin.
Oh, yeah, it's easy. Alshon Jeffrey. Lock Alshon Jeffrey in. I think he's another great, fantastic play. There's no way you can leave Alshon Jeffrey on the bench in this matchup. So those would be the three that I went with.
See, I'm having a hard time deciding between Macklin and Jeffrey now. I know Flacco's coming back from that back thing, so I'm leaning Jeffrey here. I agree on the Sanders front. I was never kind of a big Sanders fan to begin with since Peyton left. Maybe he proves us wrong and he has a blow-up game. That wouldn't be the first time, but I would err on the side of caution. Now it's just a decision between Macklin and Jeffrey. I agree. Marshall, Cobb are locked in, so you should lock in Marshall and Cobb on your lineup immediately. That Flacco injury scares me a little bit. I would go with Jeffrey as well. So I would say Jeffrey, Marshall, and Cobb. Ryan, you have a rebuttal there at all?
Yeah, for me, I just don't like Alshon going against Josh Norman. Josh Norman is his projected matchup and pretty much should follow Alshon around the field there. And last year when these two faced off, Jordan Matthews was in for a shit day. So that's what kind of scares me off of him. So I would much rather lean those other options that we talked about.
All right, so you'll have to decide between Jeffrey and you said Sanders yourself there. I guess we have a bit of a split on that one. The chat is super busy today. Thank you guys so much. Don't forget to hit that thumbs up and the subscribe button. That'll help us grow on YouTube. a lot, so that's much appreciated. Vinzone08 comes in with a 401k question. I think he's in the wrong chat. Full disclosure, that's my brother, so don't be surprised by the wise assness there. Philip comes back with another question in standard leagues. He has Henry, which I'm assuming is Derrick Henry or Jonathan Stewart.
Oh, that's a good one. But I'm gonna go with Jonathan Stewart. I know a lot's been made of how well the 49ers have addressed their defensive woes, as they were pretty much the last ranked team in every rushing category that you could imagine last year, and running backs just ate them alive. But they went out and got Reuben Foster. They're building up their defensive line there. So it should help them essentially, but I still think that Stewart is definitely in line here for goal line backs. Last year was the first year that Jonathan Stewart actually surpassed Cam Newton in red zone carries, which I think is interesting. So if they get down there inside the 20, I think that Stewart is definitely going to see that work. They don't want Cam running the ball as much because of his concussion history. I would much rather
You'd much rather what? You cut off there for a second.
Oh, sorry. I would much rather go with Stewart there.
I agree. I'd have to go with Jonathan Stewart here. Everybody's high on the Christian McCaffrey hype train there, but Jonathan Stewart's still starting, still getting them carries, and we don't know what to expect out of Derrick Henry, especially if what's his name? Gosh. That guy, the starter.
Markham.
Yeah, how do I forget his name? Especially if he's healthy.
He's kind of important there, important.
A little bit.
No, yeah, we just don't know. I mean, at this point, I still think that Henry is going to be in line for some touches, but as long as Murray is healthy there, I don't think you can play him over guys like Jonathan Stewart in this matchup. Henry, that is.
Right. You agree, Kev?
It's definitely Jonathan Stewart.
Okay, so Chester Richmond has a flex standard league question. Or actually wide receiver and flex. He has T.Y. Hilton, Alshon Jeffrey, Allen Robinson, Ty Montgomery, and Mike Wallace. He needs us to pick 3. So Hilton, Jeffrey, A-Rob, Ty Mo, and Mike Wallace. Ryan, you've been kind of interacting back and forth with the chat, so I'm going to let you go first on most of these because you kind of know what to expect on the questions.
Yes. So let's see here. What did I say? So my 3 guys I would say is Tymo, Ty, and Mike Willis. He asked us to pick 3. It is standard, so I do think that there is merit to wanting to play Allen Robinson here. I know Kev will probably talk him up a little bit, but to me, I think that Tymo and Aaron Rodgers, I think he's definitely in line to see some work because he's pass catching and running the ball. T.Y. Hilton, I had talked about with Chester. Like I said, you drafted this guy to be your stud. I like him leaps and bounds over everybody else as far as, he's pretty much that only option there for Scott Tolzien to stretch the field. And we saw last year that even when Andrew Luck misses, T.Y. Hilton can still put up some substantial weeks there. From scoring purposes. And then Mike Wallace is just another guy that I think I'm not on Alshon Jeffrey at all. So for me, it was between him and Mike Wallace. And Mike Wallace, I think, just has a better chance of scoring a touchdown there. So Wallace, Tymo, and T.Y. Hilton.
You said Wallace, Tymo, and T.Y. Hilton?
Correct.
You are really concerned about Jeffrey against Josh Norman.
I really am, man. I just don't, I saw him play here in Chicago, and when the matchups are not good for him against corners, he just does not excel. So, and I just think Carson Wentz will be afraid to throw to him. I believe I read something doing my research for DFS that Carson Wentz of 46 chances that he had to throw against the Redskins last year, he only targeted Norman 3 times. That's definitely worrisome. It's like how Aaron Rodgers avoids Richard Sherman when they play Seattle. So, if Alshon hits, I'm going to go down with that, but I don't think it's a good spot.
T.Y. Hilton's a tough play, man, with Scott Tolzien, but he should still try to feed him at least. What do you think, Kev?
What were the options?
Welcome to the show.
Kevin's over there sweating those DFS lineups.
Oh, man. T.Y. Hilton, Alshon Jeffrey, Allen Robinson, Ty Montgomery, Mike Wallace. You got to pick 2.
Oh, Allen Robinson
Three.
for sure.
Pick 3, sorry.
I'm starting Allen Robinson this week. I'm starting him in DFS. I'm starting him in, no problems in season long. I think that he is in a great spot. Yes, the Houston Texans defense is tough, but I think we have questions about their secondary. I feel like that Allen Robinson is easily going to see 8 to 10 at least targets this week. I think you feel great about that. I've already mentioned Alshon Jeffrey. I would definitely start him. I'm not starting Mike Wallace. No thanks. I want no part of that. And then, I think you. The other one was T.Y. Hilton. I think you have to start him. I don't feel great about it, but I don't think I'm sitting him. Not with the options that are the other options there. If you have to start 3 of them, so I think for me it'd be Allen Robinson, Alshon Jeffrey, and T.Y. Hilton.
All right, so I'm going to go with. I agree on the Allen Robinson front. I really think he's a good play this week. I know they're playing Houston, tough matchup coming off the hurricane. Blake Bortles looked awful last year, but he gets the targets. He was still, top 10 in targets last year? Just couldn't make many plays out of him because some of them weren't catchable. I'm not going with Jeffrey here, though. I think I'm going to go with Ty-Mo with Green Bay. I know it's a tough matchup against Seattle, but they find ways to get him involved. He's just a playmaker, and I'd have to go with him in this matchup. And then I would have to agree on the T.Y. Hilton front. You really don't have much of a choice but to play him. Staying away from Jeffrey in this because of the Josh Norman stuff and because you have better options, I feel like. So I would go with Hilton, Robinson, and Ty-Mo. Ryan went with Mike Wallace, Ty-Mo, and Hilton. And then Kev went with Hilton, Jeffrey, and Robinson. So if we kind of put our heads together and take the common denominators, you would be starting Hilton, Robinson, and Ty-Mo there. Up to you, though. You may have to make some decisions on your own. Lots of questions coming in still, guys. This one's a little bit easier than the last 2 that we had. Phillip Rivers or Matthew Stafford?
Give me the Matthew Stafford side of things, especially what we saw in the preseason with them playing paced up. I just think that he's definitely in a good spot here to kind of, score some points here on an Arizona defensive team that is traveling from the West Coast to the East Coast to play here at Ford Field. I think that this game, I believe, started at a 48 over/under. I'm not sure what it's at now, but Vegas is definitely expecting points to be scored in this game. So that's what really makes me like this matchup. Phillip Rivers, while I think he could, find some chances to score there, I think really the way that you take advantage of Denver is establishing the run. So Melvin Gordon is probably going to be the guy they try and get going in that game. And we know how the Denver secondary is just full of ball hawks. I think that Rivers is just, I think the safer play is to go with Stafford there. But I'll be curious to hear what Kev thinks.
It's 100% Stafford. This just isn't a great matchup for Phillip Rivers. It's definitely Stafford. It's sort of, but what we hope is that this game is more of a pace-up game. We saw last year where the Detroit Lions really tried to play more of a Dallas Cowboys type of approach, where they take the ball out of try to run the slowest pace as possible, and really try to keep their defense off the field, because the Lions' defense is horrible. They have one of the worst secondaries in the league, and their linebacking core is probably even worse. So if we see the Lions from early in last year, I think that Matt Stafford's in a fantastic spot, because they're going to have to keep up with the Cardinals and their offense, which I think is going to be a big bounce back offense this year. I love all Cardinals and DFS. As for Stafford, I think he's just the better play no matter what in this situation. I just don't see a scenario where Phillip Rivers can go into Denver and put up the type of numbers you want to see. So I think it's easily Matt Stafford.
Deion Buchanan not playing for the Arizona Cardinals, who is Matthew Stafford's matchup and their best defensive player. Arguably, it's between him and Matthew, I bet. But I believe I saw he will not be playing this week.
What, are you just forgetting about Patrick Peterson?
Oh, Patrick, you're right. Sorry, Patrick Peterson. Still, Buchanan sticks out the most to me for some reason. That dude's a beast. How many people play safety and linebacker? Come on.
Oh, man. Don't disrespect Patrick Peterson before
No, Patrick Peterson's the man. You're right. You're right.
Sunday even gets down. Come on, Anthony.
Cardinals. All right, guys, this is going to be the last question I have time for today. Don't worry, though. Kevin and Ryan are going to stick with you till 1 p.m. Eastern time and make sure they get through all of your questions right before kickoff so you have time to get your roster changed. The last one for me would be Houston or the Rams defense here. I'll jump in and say I'm going to go with Houston over the Rams. I really like the Rams defense this week, and if I don't have the opportunity to start Houston, I would definitely start the Rams. But if I had to choose between the two of them, I'm going with the Houston Texans. They are fired up coming off of all the hurricane stuff that's going on. They're playing Blake Bortles, who is just a turnover machine. I really like Houston's defense this week. Plus, they're just an awesome defense. I mean, we're going to get to see J.J. Watt and Jadeveon Clowney on the same field finally. It's going to be pretty sweet.
Yeah, well, pretty much splitting hairs in this position, right? You got a Houston defense that gets to go against Blake Bortles in Jacksonville. Yes, please. And then you get the Rams defense that gets to go against Scott Tolzien at home here. Yes, please. So I think that you really can't go wrong either way. My pick was also Houston as well, too. You know, with J.J. Watt coming back, that defense looks fully healthy. They're playing in front of their home crowd there. So I think there is a lot of merit to think that this game could just get out of hand really quickly. If the offense gets going, the defense will be in great spots to make Blake Bortles be who we know he is, turnover prone, and create some fumbles there, interceptions as well too. The Rams offense is really not that great. Like as good of a matchup as we think this is, I think that game could be really ugly. And pretty much, you know, we know Jared Goff can turn the ball over too. So maybe the Rams end up playing from behind and the offense is on the field more than the defense. So I think Houston is the play you want to go with.
I love both of them. I think they're both strong plays. But I think I'd go Texans. Bestie. I think it's I think you can almost lock in a Blake Bortles pick six.
Absolutely. He's the new Matt Schaub of the NFL there. All right, guys, unfortunately, I do have to hop off. It's been a lot of fun. First game day show of the year. I do want to mention, though, just in case, or not just in case, but so we don't forget, is that we are doing 2 shows a week this year. We are going to do a recap show that gives you waiver options. That'll launch Tuesday mornings. It's only going to be a 15-minute show. And then we're going to do our regular TFA podcast. That comes out every Thursday morning, which is an hour to an hour and a half. That's our much longer show previewing the week to come. So be on the lookout for 2 shows a week this year, plus the game day show each and every Sunday. So if you want to count that, 3 weeks. And these guys are doing a DFS show. I hope you have a lot of time to listen to podcasts because we got all the podcast content you'll ever want or need. But that's it for me, guys. Have an awesome week 1. Best of luck to all your teams, and I will see you guys next week.
Later, Ant. All right, let's take it over here, Kev. So still got some questions in the chat that we can answer for a little bit. And then I think we were going to save the last 10 minutes here to answer any DFS questions that you guys might have before a lot comes up. This is pretty much the first biggest week that we have of NFL DFS here with the Sunday main slate. A lot of people want to get in the Millie Maker. We actually awarded a Millie Maker from the DJ Nation podcast that we did with Chris this morning. So, you know, we're trying to make sure that we cover all of our bases here. But we still had some questions in the chat, Kev. This one's real interesting. I want to get this in just so we have some Kansas City Chiefs talk for you. TN was asking about Kareem Hunt and if he thought that he was the real deal or was that just something that was kind of an outlier there?
I think he's definitely the real deal. I mean, you're obviously not going to expect what he did every week, but I think he's going to see the lion's share of the touches every single week. I think you can expect that sort of performance from him. You know, I think, you know, realistic 100 yards and a touchdown, you know, total yards and a touchdown is realistic for him almost on every week. There's no, at this point it's tough because, like, you know, people will bring up, oh, well, you should sell him because his value may be as high as it'll ever be after that huge performance in front of the world. But I don't think I could because he's the one player that you really feel like, out of all the running backs, there's probably, there's only a small handful full of guys where you feel just confident in their role. And he's one of them in Kansas City. Sharkhandrick West is an afterthought. Sharkhandrick West will get some options, but I think you noticed early in the game where the Chiefs sort of brought in Sharkhandrick West for third downs because of, Kareem Hunt's perceived lack of pass blocking ability. But then as the game started going on, you started to notice them, get the ball in his hands far more often. They started using more. And then Sharkhandrick West became an afterthought until the game was iced. And they pulled Kareem Hunt out of the game. So I think you could definitely believe in Kareem Hunt. Unless somebody just absolutely blew you out of the water, I don't think you could move Kareem Hunt just because where he's at. And I just think you feel fantastic about his situation and what you're going to be able to get from him. Like I said earlier, I do think that, on other shows, I think Kareem Hunt will easily be the top scoring rookie back this season.
Yeah, man, I was just curious to get your thoughts there because I don't have Kareem Hunt in any leagues. I was real jealous when I didn't watch the game and I got home, couldn't believe that the Chiefs had came back and won from that deficit, and just to see Kareem Hunt just pretty much pull his pants down and over in New England was just amazing. I would kind of lean, so high, but I get it. When you get somebody like a Kareem Hunt, who, you could have drafted in the 4th round, 5th round, 6th round, and to just feel like you really struck gold there, I think the offer would have to be substantially high in order for you to want to move him. I think that you could pretty much, just get a loot for him right now at this point. Let's go in here with some other questions here. Studer had another question. He's been really active in the chat. He's asking about the Giants defense or Steelers defense. I kind of like both of them, but to lean Steelers here just because of the fact that they get to go against this rookie quarterback here.
Steelers and who?
Steelers and Giants.
Oh yeah, you got. I'd go Steelers. I think you feel like that they're going to put tons of pressure on. They're one of the teams that rush the passer more than most teams in the league against a rookie quarterback. Despite Deshaun Kaiser is kind of funny because he had a couple like really highlight plays over in the preseason, and it's sort of catapulted him up in most people's minds. And I still don't think we have any idea because he did not look fantastic. I think he had some moments where he looked fantastic, but I would not feel comfortable with even thinking about playing around with that. So I think that I would definitely go the Steelers. I think they're somebody who I would feel great about starting this week.
Yeah, man, totally with you on that. We have a little lull right here for questions right now in the chat, so we can just turn it over to DFS for a little bit for the time being. And as the questions come in, we'll try and get you guys answered for your start and sit questions and help you with your redraft, dynasty leagues, and all that. But Kev, have DraftKings up right now. I just got into a second Millie Maker. They coerced me into it by saying they would give me these 3,000 FPPs for doing a second one. So I'm in it now. I'm curious to know where you're at with your plays and how you're kind of feeling about these games. I'm really, I can't get off of having exposure to the Seattle Green Bay game. I can't get off of trying to fit in Le'Veon or David Johnson. I can't get off of Carlos Hyde at his price on DK. So I find myself, kind of leaning towards the similar guys, but I'd be curious to know if you have some plays that you think are going to go lower owned or that not a lot of people are on at this point.
Well, you haven't noticed, that's exactly what I've been doing. I've been trying to set lineups. I have a ton of lineups to go. And so I'm trying to scurry as fast as possible and make
14 minutes, man. 14 minutes.
Yeah, and I still got probably like 7 more lineups to make. But no, I've found myself gravitating. I have a ton of exposure to Todd Gurley. I have a ton of exposure to Mari Cooper. I have a ton of exposure to Terrell Pryor. I like all of them. I even like a Kirk Cousins, Terrell Pryor, Jordan Reed stack, where I don't think a lot of people are going to have that. I've sort of tried. What's that?
I just said that's amazing because, when I was building lineups last night, Kirk Cousins was just one of those plays. I saw, this Jalen Mills is supposed to be on Terrell Pryor, who PFS has him rated as one of the worst corners. That's one of my favorite things to look at is the wide receiver cornerback matchup. And so I'm like, if I'm playing this much Pryor, I got to have Cousins exposure. But then, like you said, just even getting that extra exposure there to Jordan Reed, who I don't think anybody is playing this week. Like I have few and far between to listen to a podcast that wants to talk up this guy at all. And I don't know if that's because of his price or because of the other guys who are questionable, but Jamison Crowder is going to play. It looks like Doxson is even going to play too. So I think that'll even get fewer people onto Jordan Reed. And he's always in for a 2-touchdown, 100-yard game, right?
No, for sure. I think you lock him in. I think you feel pretty good about it. I've been sort of going around and trying to leave my flex spot as if you're playing the main slate. Like I've been trying to lock in whether it's Sterling Shepard, Brandon Marshall, Evan Ingram, in my tight end slot, so I can kind of have options or Cole Beasley, because I think Cole Beasley is another interesting option as well, with it being a PPR league. So I've been sort of locking those guys in into my flex, so I have the ability to late swap tonight. I've done that in almost probably 60% of my lineups, just so I can get some exposure to that late game and kind of give me some flexibility depending on where I'm at.
I hear you.
But
what are you doing? What are you doing with Bell and DJ?
I'm splitting them. I have both in any lineup. But now,
Okay.
Full disclosure, I only put in 2 cash lineups, and so I have over 45 lineups, and only 2 have them. We'll have, and those are my cash lineups.
Yeah.
Other than that, in GPPs, no thanks. I've been splitting it, and I really don't have as high of exposure to Le'Veon Bell that I do as to David Johnson. And that's simply because I don't feel fantastic about Le'Veon Bell this week. I could easily see the Steelers getting up early and really kind of putting this out of reach for them. And then pulling Le'Veon Bell to sort of save him, and sort of, especially since he doesn't have he hasn't been active. Obviously, he wasn't involved in training camp, wasn't involved in preseason. And I think it is an interesting point to bring up the fact that last year that, we say, well, Le'Veon Bell was suspended the first 4 weeks, but he still got to go through training camp. He still got to go through preseason. So with that, he hasn't at all. And so I'm not saying the man's in bad shape. There was some reports earlier in the week that Le'Veon Bell was winded during practice and things like that. So I love Le'Veon Bell, but I just think the risk is so high with him that I don't feel fantastic about him. And I don't think that you can, especially at 9,800, where I feel like there's guys like DeMarco Murray and LaShawn McCoy who are substantially cheaper than him, that I think they offer the same upside at a discount, where you can sort of get some of the other wide receivers in there, like Julio Jones, who is in an absolute smash spot against Chicago.
Wow.
I mean, unless they sort of do that, I think last year where they put like 3 or 4 players, like almost like triple teamed them the entire game. If they try to do that, then I still think Julio Jones can still pop off. Or if not, so what I have been doing is creating a few Taylor Gabriel lineups.
Okay. Okay.
If that happens,
Here we go.
and they sort of triple team Julio Jones, I think that they're going to get the ball to somebody, and I think Taylor Gabriel could feast on that secondary if they go overboard, sort of like they did against Julio last year. So I do have a couple Taylor Gabriel lineups.
All right, so let's kind of spin this here, because we did get another question from Studer, and I'll just keep it both on redraft and from a DFS perspective, because I think they both kind of correlate. He asked us if we liked Matt Ryan today. I don't. I did make one lineup with him because I do have 4 or 5 teams that have Julio on them, possibly more. So I wanted to make sure I did have that correlation play there, just in case they did go bonkers here in Chicago. But just think that, Matt Ryan, we talk about Big Ben's home road splits. It's the same thing for Matt Ryan. He loves playing in Atlanta. He loves playing outside. And when he has to travel on the road, it's just not the same. I still think that Julio can have, thing, and Matt Ryan could only have, maybe 200, 250 yards and possibly that 1 touchdown. But those, 100 yards and a touchdown can go to Julio there. So I'm not keen on playing him this week. if you had other options out there, like on the waiver wire, I know Sam Bradford was available. I really like him this week going against New Orleans, so I would pretty much be able to pick him up and maybe possibly play him over Matt Ryan. How are you thinking?
Matt Ryan and who?
Just Matt Ryan in general. Like, what are your thoughts on him this week?
I think it's a scary proposition to run him out there. With it being on the road, but at the same time, I still think he's a QB1. Unless there's just some crazy Carson Palmer would be the one guy that I could that would be available that I could entertain the fact of starting over Matt Ryan. Other than that, no, you're starting Matt Ryan. Because despite the fact that it is on the road, and I do think this has the potential of being somewhat of a trap game, I do feel also at the same time that you have to that there's not going to be a better option out there over Matt Ryan. You have to have now in DFS. I will have no exposure to Matt Ryan. I just think there's better options out there, other plays that you can go with that are just, especially at his price. He's the 4th highest quarterback on DraftKings right now, so he's just not somebody that I would feel confident in DraftKings. But in a season long, I think you have to start him. You drafted him with probably a decent, you invested decently in draft capital in him, and like I said, unless there's like one guy and that's the only guy. Is Carson Palmer available? Then yeah, that's it.
Right. Yeah. I know you do love Palmer. I love him too. Just in a great spot there, even traveling from the West Coast to East Coast. What are your thoughts on Eli tonight? Is he somebody who's even viable at all with OBJ expected to miss? I can't do it. I can't do it. I've been burned by Eli so many times, dude. I can't even tell you. Redraft, DFS, it doesn't matter. Like, I just cannot ever get this guy's spots right.
I know he does. He typically does well in Dallas. So I think that's one thing that you can kind of hang your hat on a little bit there, that he typically does well in that spot playing in Dallas. So I think that it's not a crazy idea to play him. But I just think there's better options out there, especially, I would play, if we're getting down there to Eli, I feel like Carson Wentz, if he was available, like I mentioned, Carson Palmer, Sam Bradford. Love Sam Bradford this week. I think Sam Bradford's a great play against New Orleans. I actually have Jameis Winston and had to make a decision on who I was going to pick up. Sam Bradford and Carson Wentz were both available. I decided to go Sam Bradford. I just think Sam Bradford's one of the best pickups this week. Love the offense against the Saints. I just think everything's there. I think Sam Bradford would certainly be somebody that I'd rather play over Eli Manning.
Yeah, I love that, man. Love that play. Let's see here. We got a couple guys asking about what we think about Devin Funchess. I don't want anything to do with Devin Funchess. No, thank you. And yeah, I mean, that's pretty much where I'm at. I think that Devin Funchess has proved time and time again that he's not just ready to be an NFL caliber receiver. I think if anybody is going to see the work today in that matchup in San Francisco, it's going to be Kelvin Benjamin and Greg Olsen. So I don't like Funchess at all. What are your thoughts on Zach Ertz this week? I know he's a popular play. A lot's been made about how greatly of a matchup this is for him, as he's pretty much exposed the Redskins at least in one game of their 2 matchups every year. So are you trying to get exposure to Zach Ertz? Are you playing him in your season-long leagues? Where you at?
Oh, yeah, I think Zach Ertz is a top 5 play. Cash games at DFS, he's a top play, maybe the top play. And then I think that from there, you sort of I think that, across the board, I think he's a top play. In GPPs, I'd probably have lower ownership on him in GPPs because I think his ownership percentage is just going to be so high.
Mm-hmm. No, that makes sense. That makes sense. I'm with you there. Let's see if we got any more questions in the chat, guys. We got about 3 more minutes left with you. So if you have anything left, feel free to get them in. Kev, I can't believe you mentioned that you are playing some cash games today. That is just something that we have to mark in the books there, because Cash is all, or Kevin's all GPP, never plays cash. We got TN asking about Tyler Eifert here. Tyler Eifert, excuse me. Do we think he stays healthy all year? What are your thoughts on him? I kind of like playing him this week in the Baltimore game, and I just really like Eifert sneaky if he's healthy. This is a guy who can be, you know, a top 3 tight end if he's healthy all year.
For sure, but I think trying to judge what weeks, he's certainly touchdown dependent, always will be touchdown dependent. So, I mean, he's certainly, you know, he's a top 5 tight end play no matter what, you know?
Right. Yep. Absolutely. No, I hear you there, guys. It looks like we got Hunter. I would imagine this is Justin Hunter or Evan Ingram if OBJ doesn't play. Andrew, you got to play Evan Ingram. I'm trying to think of what other Hunter that could be. I wouldn't play Justin Hunter.
Unless Hunter Henry, maybe.
Oh, Hunter Henry. Right. I would still. Ooh, that's a little bit tougher for me because we do know how Denver likes to give up a lot of points to tight ends. With Antonio Gates still there, I would still lean Ingram if OBJ's out. You in that same boat, Kev?
Yeah.
Okay, excellent. Yeah, Philip says he likes Brandon McManus as a kicker. We obviously like him too. Brandon, he plays in Denver. He should see a lot of opportunities there to kick a lot of field goals. Guys, we are pretty much up to the gun here. We got 1 more minute left with you guys, and then NFL is going to be underway. DFS lineups are going to lock. Your season-long lineups are going to lock. Make sure you guys have set your lineups. You got about 30 seconds there. Kev, you got any last words before we are up against the lock?
Win that money.
Money, man. Hopefully you guys got great exposures across the board. Hopefully you guys are kicking ass in your week 1 matchups here. Thank you guys so much for joining us here on the Fantasy Authority Football Game Day show. Hope you guys all have a great week. We will be doing this every Sunday from 10:30 Central Time to noon Central Time to get you guys redraft questions for lock, DFS plays, so that you can set your lineups if you want to play DFS along with us. Make sure you guys are listening to the Fantasy Authority podcast, which releases on Thursdays, guys, on iTunes, Stitchers, Podbean, all your favorites. And we also have our DFS pod that releases on Fridays as well, the DJ Nation podcast. So you guys can all go check that out at thefantasyauthority.com. You can check that out on iTunes. We hope you guys have a wonderful season, and we will see you guys all next week here from the Fantasy Authority. Peace.